blood, didn't she? But she knew that Jesus was passing by, and she knew one touch of him would make her whole. Oh, what are you saying there? When I'm saying there, it's time to quit looking at the obstacles. It's time to quit looking at the doubt. And it's time to start looking with the spiritual eyes. Seeing is not believing. I believe that. By faith, we accept these things. Read Hebrews chapter 11. By faith. You'll notice that word, by faith. By faith. By faith. Listen. Out of 12 spies that were sent to look at the promised land, how many only come back with a good report? 2. Joshua and Caleb. That's something, ain't it? The majority saw all the problems. They saw all the giants that was in the land. They saw all the opposition. They saw all the obstacles that was before him. You know, Deuteronomy 1:30 puts it like this. God told them this on many times. The Lord your God, which goes before you, he shall fight for you, according to all that he did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes. What he was saying there, the same God that brought you out of Egypt will be the same God that brings you into the promised land. He'll fight the battle for you. But the majority begin to see the problems. They didn't see it by faith. They seen the problems. Only 2 come back and said, let us go at once and possess the land. There were 2 that registered faith, and the majority would not move because they seen what was in there. Let me tell you something. It ain't about what's in the land. It ain't how big the giants is or the obstacles that are problems there. It's about how big our God is this morning. The old song, he's bigger than all my problems. He's bigger than all my fears. He's bigger than anything that comes my way. Anybody? I don't know that words to that old song, but I know it goes something like that. But the majority sees the problems, and God is saying, quit looking at the problems and start looking at him. Hear people say, oh, this problem's bigger than me. Yeah, I know it is. It's bigger than you. But it ain't bigger than God. Let me get it down to this level. Didn't he say he put all things under his feet? Oh, let me correct that statement a little bit. Didn't he say he put all things under his feet? Now, if he's living inside of you, don't that mean that giant is under your foot too? So in essence, it's not bigger than you because he's inside of you. See what I'm saying? If he's put all things under his feet and he's inside of you, that means them obstacles are under your feet this morning. That devil is under your feet this morning. We'll stomp on him and tread on him. Let the feet of Jesus crush his head one more time. Let the feet of Jesus crush his works again. Let the feet of Jesus destroy him one more time. Did you hear what I'm saying? But what happens with the majority? Why don't people receive? They live on a mountain of unbelief. They live on a mountain of death and doubt. And when that unbelief comes in, let me tell you what it's going to do. It's going to rob you of what God has in store for you. It robs one of the blessings of God. How many know? Many of them didn't go into the promised land because of what? Couldn't enter into his rest because of what? Unbelief. Can I tell you? Many won't enter into the promises that he's got in store because of unbelief. I tell people this. I tell people, if you can trust him with the greatest miracle of all, what is that? Our soul, ain't it? Salvation of our soul. Why should it be a problem trusting him with the rest? Them things are minor compared to rescuing us out of hell. But people don't want to believe. Let me tell you what unbelief has done. It's caused many people to miss out and hit hell. They don't want to believe in God. They don't want to accept him. Guess what? They miss out. They meet him. Let me tell you something about hell right now. There's no unbelief in hell. They know God is who he says he is. People don't want to believe in hell. They may not believe in it here. When they wake up in eternity, they find out it's real. Unbelief will rob people of their blessings that God has got in store for them. It will. God's got things in store, but if you don't believe He can do it for you, the devil's robbed you. You've allowed the devil to steal that victory from you. You stand in the way of the blessings of God. But I believe this morning God is saying it's time to change mountains. It is time to get on the mountain of belief this morning. Just like Israel, who could have occupied that land some 38 years earlier. Let me tell you, there are many who could have had their promises before now. Did you hear me? Too many times we want to wander around in the wilderness. Tell you, if you don't believe Him, let me tell you what's going to happen. I'll make this comment right here. I made it before, then at my other church. If you don't trust God with these things, guess what you're going to find yourself doing 40 years from now? Walking around in the same old condition. Anybody know what I'm talking about? If you don't put it into the hands of God right now, I remember some people, they made the comment to me, they couldn't afford to tithe, and I said, because their finances were bad. Well, I said, well, guess what? If you don't, 40 years from now, you're going to walk around in the same boat long. They said, why? I said, because it's unbelief in God. Because what you transfer, He transforms. Anybody know what I'm talking about? What you transfer to Him, what you put in His hands, He transforms it into a blessing. 2 fish and 5 loaves. Anybody know the story of that? A little bit, and He fed what? A multitude. That little boy transferred a little, and he transformed it into a lot. I said, I will not back off of that statement. You want to go that way? Go ahead. But you're going to find yourself walking around the wilderness for 40 years trying to find yourself. You'll come up with all kinds of schemes. You'll try everything, but it'll never get you out of the wilderness until you begin to fully trust in God. And I'm telling you, I'll stick by it. The same ones were the same ones that were lined up down there at the lottery office. If you got enough money for that, you ought to be giving to God. Listen, God never intended for them to walk around there for 40 years. They walked around there for 40 years because of their unbelief. Ain't it something what God done, huh? He said, if during these 40 years, I'm going to learn you to trust in me. What did He begin to do? He'd provide them food, didn't He? Apparently, God's shoes were better than Nike or Reeboks. Because I've always pictured, as the children grew, the feet grew, the shoes had to grow with it too. You had to think about that. As the feet grew, the shoes growed along with it and never wore out. That's God. That's God right then and there. During that time, but too many times people get in, they want to dwell in this wilderness. And they want to continue to live in the wilderness. There's nothing in the wilderness that I want to live for. Why? Because they've settled on a mountain that God said. They've settled on the mount of doubt. They settled on the mount, oh, we're going down, we're going under. I don't want to hear pessimistic talk. I want to hear talk of faith. I don't want to hear doubt. I want to hear victory talk this morning. I believe you speak those things as they are. Why do you believe that? Because there's power of life and death in the tongue. Let me put it like this. Because God's been ready to work from day one. But many will not get off the mount. Many will refuse to step out and receive what God has got in store from them. Some will say, God, if you want me to have it, you come and get me. No, God said, won't you come and chase me a little bit? You may be over here and God be over there. God is telling you, I want you over here with me. If you want the promises, you come and reach out. He knew the little widow woman had the issue of blood, didn't he? But guess what? He could have went to her house, couldn't he? But what did he do? He knew she was coming along the way. I believe that. I believe he knew that. And I believe he knew that centurion servant's daughter was going to die that day. But he was showing two things right then and there. He was saying, listen, if you want it bad enough, you'll come after me and reach out and touch me as I pass by. God ain't going to force himself on others. Zacchaeus wanted to seem so bad, the wee little man he was, he climbed up a tree to get to Jesus. You know, you read in John where they put a man down through the ceiling, latched in a bed to get him into Jesus, didn't they? How bad do we need to get to Jesus? We want to stay settled on this mountain. God, come over here. God's saying, get off this mountain and come to where I'm at. And reach out and touch me this morning, and I will make you whole. If you'll reach up, he'll reach down. I believe that. Oh, but people don't want to hear. People are so settled in it. Complacent in it. People could have received the promises before now if they would have moved from the mount and just took God simply at his word. God told Israel, he said, I'll drive out the inhabitants of the promised land beforehand. But many would not believe. God has spoken in his word great promises. But how many has stepped out to receive those promises of God? Let me tell you something. That promise is right before you. What God is saying to do is reach out and touch him. Reach out and grab a hold of him. Quit living in the mountain of doubt. Quit living in the mountain of unbelief, fear, skepticism, and just simply believe him. How many know that's all he wants? It's simple faith. Faith is the size of a mustard seed. What God is saying this morning, I believe to somebody under my voice, it is time to move to Mount Calvary. It is time to get out of the mount of this world and move to a hill, to an old wooden cross right then and there. Because I'm going to tell you something about the cross. Satan was totally defeated at that cross. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Satan was defeated at that cross. The war, we got some battles. We're fighting battles right now. But the war's over. Anybody know that? The war's over. He's already won the war. You think about what 1 Colossians 2:14 and 15 tells us. Blotting out the handwritings of ordinance that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out or of the way, nailing it to the cross, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them. What is he saying there? At that cross that day, at that old cross over 2,000 years ago, hell was defeated. By one drop of blood, the promises was assured. Think about it. The promises of Christ are nailed in the cross. Think about it. You need to get a hold of this morning. When he said, it is finished, guess what that meant? It is done. It is sealed. It is handwritten. It is handwritten. And it is delivered. What do you think about it? People say, oh, the cross is just for salvation. That's the greatest thing it's for, but it's far more than salvation. The cross is for the other promises also. You see, that cross this morning said, when he said it is finished, that meant our healing was complete. That meant we got deliverance. That meant we got victory. That meant those provisions were applied to those. We now have a right to call him Abba, Father. What does that simply mean? We can call him our Father. Think about what Jesus said. If your earthly father know how to give you treasures, how much more does your heavenly Father know how to give you? You need to think about it this morning. Some of you, if you're under my voice and you don't know him this morning, today is the day to get to know him this morning. Today is the day to be introduced to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Today is the day to receive the promises from above. Let me tell you, saints of God, you've been dwelling on a mountain.